Thanks, Patty. I thought I'd start the conversation today by talking about some of the key skills that people need to successfully manage CDMOs. And when I was thinking through this, I thought there's sort of four key skills that you really need. And if I have time, I'll try and link them to how you can gain those skills working at a CDMO. If I don't have time, I know Dr. Montgomery is going to cover some of that as well. So I think one of the key things, obviously, you need to be able to do is understand the technical aspect of the work that you're doing with your outsourced partners. And one of the key reasons for that is to make sure that the work that's getting done is efficient. You don't want to be repeating experiments unnecessarily. That's going to waste time and money. For example, I know in the past we've been doing DOE work with certain people, and we've done a 12, 13 experiment DOE. Gone through all the analysis of the data and then worked out really that the DOE wasn't set up properly. We haven't been looking at the right variables. We haven't looked at a wide enough range of variables. And so, having done 2 or 3 weeks of work, we've got to start again. So you really want to make sure that you have that technical knowledge so you can, vet the work that's going on with your partners. And another thing is you've got to make sure that the analytical methods and the work that you're doing in that area is correct and you validate the right things. I remember a time we were doing a GMP campaign, and right as we got to the last step, we realized that one of the residual solvents, the last solvent step, had been missed from the residual solvent method. So, then you've got to really struggle and try and develop and validate a method really quickly to incorporate that solvent. And that can lead to a lot of delays. So you really want to make sure that you have that expertise so you can look at what's going on and make sure nothing is missing. Because things get missed by everybody, and you want to make sure that you can try and catch those. I think a really important attribute is communication. As people managing outsourcing, we're the liaison between our outsourced partners and our internal stakeholders. So we really have to be able to communicate, to our outsourced partners what our priorities are, what needs to be get done, and what our real short-term and long-term goals are. And then we've got to work and communicate internally to our teams about how things are going. Are there any potential delays? Are we going to impact, clinical trials, tox studies, and things like that? So make sure we keep our internal team informed. One of the other things that I've had done, and I'm sure a lot of the other people on the panel have done, actually have to advocate for our CDMOs. People can do a great job 99% of the time, but everybody remembers that 1%, of when things go wrong. And I think, it's often the case that management are quick to try and want to move away from a CDMO and try somebody else, if there's been an issue. But we know that we spent a long time building a relationship with that CDMO and building a trust between the two organizations. So we don't really want to just jump ship quickly. So often we're working through some of the issues that we're seeing with our management teams, explaining them to them, explaining why they happened and how they happened, and then, coming back to them and saying, look, I think we should continue this relationship. It's worth putting that effort into. I think, the third attribute is the one that I think we spend most of our time doing, and that's problem solving. A lot of our job is just resolving issues that are going on with the programs that we're managing. That can be simple. It can be, around production issues. There's always that unknown impurity that crops up right at the end of a production, and you got to figure out, what you're going to do about that. Very often that unknown impurity isn't real. It's an analytical issue, and you got to work with a QC team, an analytical team, just to verify that you really have a problem. And then if you do, and it's a real impurity, can you go ahead and work with a chemist to develop a method of purging that impurity? Or if that's not viable, can you go ahead and identify that impurity and maybe justify higher levels of that based on, existing tox data or new data that you generate? I know I had experience in the past where we actually had an unknown impurity right at the end at 0.10%, right on the threshold of acceptability. And we were concerned that, with time, that impurity might, fluctuate due to analytical issues, and we start seeing failures in our stability program. So what we went ahead and did is actually identify that impurity, understood what it was, and then we're able to actually adjust our specification to 0.15%, the ICH guidelines. There's obviously risk to that. You're going to make sure that you're not, identifying a PGI, but we knew in that case we were going to be safe, and we went ahead and did that. Some other issues that you face on a regular basis are scheduling issues. You're working with your CDMO, you have your timelines, but they have their timelines. You want to make sure that, if they have an issue with a reactor, you can work with them to understand what redundancies there are. Can you get another reactor, or can I get another filter dry if my filter dry breaks, or whatever that is. Some other things, you got problem solving investigations. We all work with the quality teams trying to understand some issues that we've seen, and can we get to a root cause and work out what went wrong, and maybe help salvage a batch from a quality point of view. Again, issues where we've seen contamination. Can you get to why that contamination happened? I've seen pens in batches, I've seen desiccant in batches, and you really try and prevent that happening in the future, and also see if there's any way that you can, rework that batch and make it acceptable from a quality point of view. And then the other thing, you're problem solving things like risk assessments. As you get further in a life cycle of a compound, you start, putting together your documentation to support validation, you're doing large scale manufacturing. You really want to make sure you understand the risks involved in those activities. So, working through risks, understanding if the risks are acceptable, and then sort of brainstorming ideas into how you would mitigate some of those risks. And so the fourth thing that comes to mind is sort of the business aspects and the financial aspects of oversight of CDMOs. We're all working on contracts, those endless contracts, especially master service agreements, which are the bane of all of our existence. Working through all that with our legal teams and things like that. And then, working on budgets. Some of us are working on pretty large budgets. CMC tends to be the second largest budget within an organization behind clinical. I know in previous jobs, my budget has been as large as some of the other companies I've worked with. So we've got to work on those budgets, making sure we're tracking those budgets, making sure we're keeping with the spend, and if we're not, making sure we're communicating that to the team above. So that's some of the things that I was thinking about initially for today.